In this video, we'll have an overview of the different meshes primitives that we have into Blender. So you can find it with the menu add here, mesh, and we will see all these little objects here. And you can call it with, and I told you, with Shift A. Okay, and Shift A you will have mesh and can choose your object here. By default, your object will appear into the 3D cursor. So if you move your 3D cursor with Shift right click, for example, and that you will add the Shift A here, UV sphere, for example, you will have here your sphere that will be there. But if you put back your cursor with Shift C in the center, and you will add your next object here. Okay, and it will be a torus and can move it after. So that's it for how it works basically to add an object. Now let's select everything with A and delete everything with X. Okay, and we will go into orthographic mode and we will add our first object and see a little what's happening and what are the options that you can use when you add an object. So first object that you will know already, it's a cube. And here into the options, you will have, just after adding the cube and the object that you did add, this little here options, these little options will appear. But be careful, because if you move your cube or do another operation like call another object, these options will disappear. This little menu will disappear here. So it's when you add an object that you define how this object will be, and after when it's done, it's done. Okay, so here you have a cube by default, not a lot of parameters to manage here. A cube is a cube. You can manage the size of it, you can align it to the world or to the view, for example, if you want. Okay, you can manage the location of it if you want to move it, okay, a little into an axis or whatever. So you have different options, or even make a rotation like that, for example. It's possible. But yeah, for a cube, not a lot of options. A cube is a cube, 6 faces, nothing really crazy. So for now, we will take this cube, and just to show you, I will just do a GX, and I can move my object into the x-axis like that. And as you can see now, I have other options that concern my last action, okay? But the options of my cube did disappear. So let's say I will add here the plane, the first one. So the plane is just basically a surface. There is no volume into it, and just only 4 vertices and 1 face. Okay, so same here, you will find options that are more or less the same than the cube, and nothing crazy about it. I will not lose time about that. With Shift A and circle here, there is something a little more interesting. You can see that now you have a circle. Basically there is no face, it's transparent, only a wire here. If you watch it into top view there, you will have the possibility to see that there is a kind of incrementation around this circle. It's a number of vertices, little dots that compose our circle here. So if I decrease this to 16, for example, I will have something low poly and more geometric. Okay, so if you want a kind of octagon, you will just choose 8 and you will have an octagon like that. Okay, but if you choose 64, you will have something that you can almost not see the incrementation and make a almost perfect circle, let's say. You can change the radius, you can change the fill type too. The fill type will give you a surface. So if I choose hang-on, for example, it will create a big face there. And if I choose triangle, it will create a lot of triangles there. But you cannot see by default, but if you enable the wireframe here, you can see all the little triangles in the center that comes into a center point here. And if I choose hang-on, you will have only a big face like that. So by default, just choose hang-on. Yeah, and it's always possible to create triangles, whatever, in the end. So that's it for the circle. So with a little more options. So as I told you, here the number of vertices or whatever. If I move my circle, now I cannot change the number of vertices of my circle. When it's done, it's done. So be careful and be aware of that when you manage your objects. So the next one is the UV sphere. The UV sphere, it's really like a little the Earth representation, with here the segment and the segment like that and the rings. Okay, so you can manage the number of segments and number of rings, for example, to have something more smooth, okay, and with more geometry, or to have something with really low poly style like that with 12 and 6, for example. And it's really the same system than the Earth, with the segments and the rings by the Earth's representation. Okay, so easy to manage. Okay, the UV sphere. The next sphere, it's a different system for this one. It's an icosphere, and the icosphere, as you can see, it's made with triangles only, so with faces with 3 vertices. Okay, it's not 4 vertices there. Here you have 4 vertices, more or less, except on the top, but for the rest it would be 4 vertices. But this one is composed by only triangles, and you will add some subdivision. So let's say if you take a subdivision at 1, you will have something really low poly and not a sphere at all. But if you increase the subdivision, it will smooth more the object by increasing the number of vertices inside. As you can see here, you have the number of vertices into your scene. So here it's 300. Okay, if you increase the subdivision, it will go to 780, and if you increase more, it will be 2000, and until you have so much vertices into your object that it will be almost smooth. Okay, that you cannot see the little faces. Okay, so interesting one, but there are some advantages to have some quads or some triangles in some cases, and we will discover that more into the edit mode section. The next one here with Shift A will have a cylinder. So a cylinder, it's the same system than a circle. It's composed by 2 circles that are linked to each other with faces. And here you can just manage the number of vertices. So if I take 12, I will have something very low poly there. And if I take 64, I will have something smoother. Okay. You have the same kind of options with the fill types here. You can choose the n-gon or nothing if you want something empty, like a tube or something like that, and or triangles, and the same, you will see triangles that will appear there if you have some triangles. And if not, if you take n-gon, you will just have one big face. Okay, so that's it for the cylinder. I will move it with GX into the x-axis like that, and we will add the next object with Shift A. This object will be a cone. Okay, so the cone has basically the same options than the cylinder, but you will have 2 radius, the radius on the base and the radius on the top there, and you can manage the same way, except that, so if you want something low poly, for example, and manage the depth to have something a little different, so you can just basically have this kind of shape easily. Okay, so with GX I will put it into the other side because I have still 2 objects at least, I think. So with Shift A I will add another mesh. This mesh is a torus. So this torus can be managed by two different parameters. Here you can have the major minor radius and the exterior or interior radius. So if you manage with major and minor radius, it will be just tell the size of the minor radius or the major radius here. So if I increase the major radius, it's the global size of the object that will be bigger, but the radius of the tube itself will not change. Okay, it's a minor radius here that you can change like that. But if it's the exterior interior, so you can manage your interior radius without changing your exterior radius. So let's say, for example, if you have a wheel and you want to put a tire inside the wheel, outside the wheel, so you don't want to change the outside radius, let's say, or you don't want to change the interior radius because you have basically the wheel inside, so you will want to change only that one, and like this you are sure that inside it will stay the same. Okay, so it can be interesting to manage that. Then after you have the number of segments, the major segments, if you increase it, it will give you more segments like that, and the minor segments, it will be the same, but on that side. Okay, so that's it for the torus here. I will just make it a little more little. Okay, good, and make a GX to put it into my x-axis like this, and I will add another object. It will be a grid this time. As you can see, it's similar to the plane, but it has some subdivisions inside, so I can add more faces inside my plane like that. So a grid is subdivided, and if you increase, for example, the number of subdivisions, you will have more possibility to have more faces and more vertices inside. If you want to make a curve with this, a curvy shape, or so it will be possible, but if you take a plane with no subdivision like that, it will not be possible to make a curve because you don't have any geometry to manage at that point. So it can be interesting to manage here with the grid. So I move the grid a little there. Okay, and then I will add my last object. It's Suzanne. It's a head of monkey, so very useful to make some experimentations. Let's say Suzanne is really the experimentation guy, so you will have the possibility to manage some lighting, to make some experiments with the lighting, with the shaders, or whatever you want. If you want to use, let's say, a more complex object than a cube or a cylinder, and that will show maybe more interesting reflects on it, you will add a Suzanne, okay, and make a Ctrl 2 into this to make a subdivision surface modifier. Okay, I give you a little shortcut. So, and then if you remove that here with the wireframe, so you will have something really more interesting in terms of geometry and reflex than a cube. Okay, especially if you make a right click and shade smooth, you will see that here you will have something good to work with for experiments, and to see a little how the shadow will act and how the lights will act on this object. So it can be interesting to make some experiment, this one. Each 3D software has a specific one. I think it's a kind of teapot into other softwares, or maybe 3ds Max or Maya, I don't remember. So anyway, for us, it will be Suzanne. It's a Blender one. And that's it for this menu. You can see that when you do Shift A, you have the mesh options here, but you have a lot of objects there. And we will just have a quick overview of all of these types of objects. We will not see everything, but at least what they represent and what they do. And like that, we will be good to go for the object mode. And we can start to see how to manipulate this object.